Hey guys, it's Bailey from Making Up the Midwest, and I am so excited for this review. It is for a palette that I have been anticipating ever since I heard it was coming out, the LORAC Pro Palette 2. The reason I was so excited for this to launch is because even though I try and show all my palettes as much love as possible, when push comes to shove and I need something like a go-to palette, I always reach for the Pro Palette 1. You can see, compared to the two, this one is well loved, well worn, and fun fact, it has the only shadow that I have ever hit pan on. It's this shade Taupe right here. It is the perfect crease color, which is mostly what I use it for. It's also great for a wash over the lid if you just want some subtle shadow, but it still amps up your everyday eye makeup. And I've also used it in a pinch to contour because it's a perfect mid-tone matte brown. Combined with the rest of the shadows in this palette, it is just my favorite. So it's no surprise that when I heard the second one was coming out, it was as good as in my cart and purchased. So here it is, much like the original version, has a nice sized mirror up here and contains 16 shadows, which is a lot, I think, for a palette that only retails for $42 when similar palettes like the Urban Decay Naked palettes are $52 now, I believe. I should also mention that with that you also get a primer, as you did with the first LORAC Pro palette. It's easy to forget when you're overwhelmed with all of these gorgeous shadows, but you do get a travel size primer, and this is one heck of a primer. It's great at keeping your eyeshadow on, really helping that pigmentation pop, whether it's a pastel shade, a light shade, or a deep smoky shade. It does everything that an eyeshadow primer should do. But back to the palette. So the original LORAC Pro palette, I would say, has more warm tone colors. Prior to seeing this, I would have said it had a nice mix of warm and cool, but sitting next to the second palette, I would say it is overwhelmingly warm, while the second palette has a few gem tones here and there, but also more so just cooler shades overall. The second palette comes with 8 matte shadows and 8 shimmery shadows, and the mattes were a huge selling point for me when it came to the original version. Mattes to me are such a hard texture to come by when they're done right. They're not chalky, they smooth on really easily, they don't apply unevenly. It's just a hard texture to do, I've found. And so to have 8, not only in one palette, normally palettes consist of the majority shimmers with a few mattes here and there to use in the crease, in the corner, wherever. There are 8, and they're all stellar, each and every one of them. Then you move down to the shimmer and you find the exact same thing. And just like the first palette, the shimmery shades in the LORAC Pro 2 are smooth and buttery, and the shimmer is so finely milled that while, yes, it's evident that you're wearing shimmer on your eyes, it doesn't feel gritty in the least. You know, there is no uneven texture there, just very smooth and buttery. I mean, if you want to talk about buttery shadows, these are the butteriest on the market. So in terms of shadow quality, I hope I've made it clear that I think the shadows in the second palette are just as fantastic as those in the original. When it comes to color selection, however, I did mention that those in the two are slightly cooler, well, overall cooler than those that you'd find in the original LORAC palette, but there are a few shades that are similar, and one in fact that's identical. There are 2 black shadows in each of these palettes, and frankly I couldn't see this without a black. I think every palette needs a good matte black, so I have no arguments with finding it in here, but that is one shade that you need to be aware that you're going to double up on if you do have 2. So while those are the only identical shadows between the 2 palettes, there are a few shades that are similar, namely beige, that is a soft shimmery champagne shade but still cooler than light bronze from the original palette, and light brown and taupe are also very similar. Light brown again is cooler from the Pro 2 than the taupe in the Pro 1, but as you can see, I've gotten a lot of use out of my taupe, so I have no qualms about getting another one in the Pro 2. And really, those are the shades that were most similar between the 2 palettes. You really don't double up on much of anything. The major difference, I would say, between these two, beyond one being warmer than the other, is the presence of the gem tones, which I personally love. But one thing that I wanted to talk about is that people saying that their gem tones aren't their thing, so they're going to pass on this palette. But before you completely write this palette off as too wild and crazy because you're more of a solid neutrals kind of girl, this really isn't, when you look at it, it's not overwhelmingly gem toned. There are 3 ultimately. A deep smoky plum, a navy, which I'm wearing as a liner right now. It comes off as this deep velvet rich blue, and jade, which is a shimmery medium deep jade green. Together, yes, they do give this palette a little more color than meets the eye when you look at the Pro 1, but when you really break it down, this is a very neutral palette, albeit a little cooler than the original. So if cool neutral shadows are your jam, this could be right up your alley. I personally don't. I tend towards warmer neutrals, and I love this palette. In conclusion, absolutely recommend the Pro 2 palette. The deciding factor really should be whether this color palette is for you, because the quality is 100% as good as the original version, so it's whether or not this color palette is for you or not. I think you can definitely own the two. They supplement each other nicely, so you can have a more well-rounded neutral shadow range with a mix of a few colors here and there. But if you really have your heart set on just getting one of these, the bottom line is the one is a little warmer. It also contains a few more neutral colors. Up in here you get some warmer browns, but if you don't need this many browns in your eye look and you much prefer cooler shades, some gem tones, then the 2 is definitely for you. Please be on the lookout for a tutorial, like a 3-in-1 or a 4-in-1 look tutorial that I'm going to have coming up here soon using the Pro 2, because I am in love with it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.